Hello, and welcome to the Globe and Mail Craft Club. I'm Jana Pruden. I'm a crime and feature writer at the Globe and Mail, and at the moment, I'm also the host of our pop-up pandemic craft club. This is a very special craft club because this is our 10th class, and it was originally planned to be the end of our series, so I wanted to make it really special. Thanks to popular demand, we've actually decided to do a summer series of 3 more classes. So after this class, we're going to go down to 1 class per month for June, July, and August, when we will wrap up this program. So for the moment, I think let's consider this a celebration of the first 10 classes and also the launch of our summer program. Our next class is going to be a tie-dye class on Tuesday, June 22nd. So watch for more information about that in the days to come. You can stay up to date on what's coming and take any previous classes anytime at tgam.ca/craft club. You can also get updates by subscribing to the Globe and Mail's Parenting and Relationships newsletter. And I really encourage you to join our Facebook page, Globe Craft Club, where you can share your projects, ideas, and inspiration from tonight and anytime. We always say it's the happy place on the internet, and it really is. And of course, tonight is a live event. Feel free to say hi in the comments, tell us where you're from, and give us any questions that you have about our project tonight or anything you want to talk about, really. I also encourage people to subscribe always to the Globe and Mail, which not only funds incredible journalism and also my own reporting work, but also makes it possible for us to offer these classes free for everybody. They've been so fun for me these past few months, and I really appreciate all the messages I get, and I love seeing all the pictures of everybody's work. It's really been a wonderful thing at pretty unusual time. I wanted to do a shout out today to 6-year-old Sadie, whose mom sent me a craft instructional video that Sadie made. Sadie, I made your craft. It's right here. I think it turned out pretty well. And I wanted to share something that Sadie said in her video. She said, if you make a mistake, it doesn't matter. You just keep trying, which I think is great advice for everyone, and especially for us crafters and cooks and bakers as we take on new projects and try new things, which we're not always immediately good at. We may have things to learn. I'm so thrilled to be able to announce our guest tonight. The Great Canadian Baking Show is a really beloved program in Canada, and I think it's been especially important to a lot of people this past season. Raufikat Oyawoye-Salami is not only a brilliant baker, but also just shone as like the nicest, kindest person who became a favorite not only with fans and with judges, but even against the people that she was competing with on the show. And if you haven't watched it, I really do encourage you to watch it. It is very wholesome. You may cry, you will laugh, and you will feel like baking. And so I'm so glad to have Raufikat here tonight, along with a very special helper, Fadila. Hello, Raufikat and Fadila.
Hello, everyone. So nice to be here. So exciting. Thank you for having me.
I have to say, as soon as we announced that you were going to come on the show, my inbox and my email filled with, Raufikat, all in exclamation marks. And I know there's many people watching today, my friends and family, who have not watched any other craft clubs until this one because they're so excited to see Raufikat. Hello, another special guest. Hi.
Sugar, say hi, Mubarak. Hi. Okay then. Thank you. Hi.
So another thing I should say, I had to convince Raufikat. I knew I wanted her to come on the show because she had just been so amazing on the Great Canadian Baking Show, but she was worried about having kids in the house and being on this live stream, and I told her, these are unusual times. We're both hosting a show from our kitchens, and so that anything that happened, we will go with it. And I know that many of you at home are trying to cook and bake and work and do creative projects with your family around. So it's an adventure for all of us, and I think there's some really beautiful things coming out of it, including that we have baking helpers to help us today.
Yes, exactly. Thank you everyone for welcoming me and my kids to your craft club. I'm so happy to be here today.
So Raufikat is arguably the best baker in the country, one of the best bakers in the country. I am not a very good baker. If I was going to be on a baking show, it would definitely be Nailed It and not Great Canadian Baking Show. We can see Raufikat has everything pre-measured, everything ready to go. I have done nothing. So I'm really excited for you to teach me how to make scones. Scones? Scones or scones?
I say scones, but scones is right as well, I guess. It depends on where you grew up.
Okay.
But I say scones. I think that's more the British pronunciation, but really I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, so we're gonna go with scones, and I'm so excited for you to teach us how to make them today.
All right then. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to preheat the oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the first thing to do. So, all right, so the oven is preheated, and I'm going to need you to measure out your flour, Jana. So 255 grams of all-purpose flour.
Okay. Now I can do that by measuring, or can I do that just with my baking or with my measuring cups?
You can do that with the measuring cups. I believe that is around 2 cups of flour, but you have to spoon and level.
Okay.
Yes.
And look, I barely have my measuring cups out. So spoon and level. See, that's the kind of thing I would normally just skip and sort of randomly scoop it up.
No, that's very important because flour gets compacted in transportation and in storage, and the air in it gets knocked out. So if you just dip your cup in and scoop, you can get up to a full 30 or 40% more flour than you need, and that would make your baked goods dry because flour absorbs moisture. So if you're not going to use a scale, which is the best method, the next best thing is to scoop. Fluff your flour up with the measuring cup, and then you can use a wooden spoon or a spatula to just scoop it into the cup lightly with a very light hand.
Okay.
So if you have a mound on the top, then you level it up, and that's 1 cup.
Okay. Okay, well, I'm going to try that. But maybe I should grab my scale. Now you've got me convinced on the scale. So here we go. Quick substitution. And we have some people saying hello. Jody Harper saying hello from Bob Cajun. Jody Salmon says her husband is helping her tonight, so that's nice. And I'm going to try on the scale.
Okay.
I use the explanation that I didn't get anything prepared just so that if people aren't prepared, they can work along with me. But maybe I just was not prepared enough. But we'll see. So here I'm tearing the scale. And you said 255 grams.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Oh, and see, I've already dropped one of my measuring spoons inside the bag of flour. I think Fadila, are you rolling your eyes at me that I'm measuring cup in the flour?
Are you? No.
She's too nice for that. So here's a question I have about flour.
Yeah.
Do we have to sift? I never sift. I made a cake this weekend. Didn't bother sifting.
No,
What's your opinion?
I don't generally sift as well. A lot of flour these days comes pre-sifted. It's a good habit to get into because sometimes you can have little bits of things that have fallen in, like when you are baking something else, a few moist crumbs that have fallen in. So it's good practice to sift. But it's a bad habit, but I generally don't sift.
Okay. This feels like, okay, I don't want to say it feels stressful, but it feels stressful enough to be baking on a live stream. What would it like to be baking on the Great Canadian Baking Show? You always look so cool and collected.
I can assure you that was all a facade. I was freaking out like a headless chicken on fire on the inside.
Well, you did a good job of hiding it. You always looked very, very relaxed.
Thank you. It wasn't, how would I put it? It was an interesting experience, because you're only there to bake as best as you can. The only thing you are there for is to just show the judges how well you can bake. You're not really there to compete against anyone except yourself. You're just there to try and prove what you can do to yourself and to the judges. So the pressure we're under is self-inflicted, basically. So it wasn't too hard to deal with it or to just go with the flow and try and make the best of anything that happened when you were on the show. So.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so I have my flour.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to have my assistant here help me mix the flour I have measured already. I also have the salt, three quarters of a teaspoon, I think, and 1 tablespoon of baking powder. So can you help me mix that, please?
So we're saying, wait, sorry, 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt?
Of table salt, yes.
Okay. I only have sea salt. Is that okay?
Yes, that's okay. That's fine.
Oh, and I'm just. I have. Oh. I just spilled a bunch of salt in, but I think we're gonna be good here.
I think you'll be good.
This is why if they start Nailed It Canada, then I will go on that as a contestant. Okay, so 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt, and you said the baking powder.
1 tablespoon.
1 tablespoon. So I'm trying to open my baking powder. A reminder to everyone, please feel free to say hello in the comments. Here's Joan Lawless from Peterborough saying hello. Michelle from Kelowna, hello. And if you have questions for Raufikat about baking, about this recipe, about other recipes, if you want to get all the gossip about the people on the show, I'm sure we can ask her all of that. Okay, so there's my baking powder. I'm the kind of baker, I once made a mistake, no, more than once, where I've mixed up baking powder and baking soda.
Okay. So, yes, you don't want to do that because baking powder and baking soda are 2 totally different kinds of leavening. So baking soda is an alkaline leavener that requires action by activation with an acid. So when you remember chemistry class, you mix an acid and a base, you get water and salt with the production of lots of gas. So that gas is what helps lift your baked product. So if you use baking soda and you don't have an acidic ingredient to activate it, it's not going to work. Baking powder has both of them and is activated by the action of water or moisture and heat. So a lot of baking powders are called double action because once you add moisture to them, they start to work, and then heat from the oven activates them fully and gives you that rising action. So if they are not substitute, you can't substitute them one for the other except you are really sure about how you can introduce an acidic ingredient into your bake if you are using baking soda, or remove the acidic ingredient if you are using baking powder.
Right. I feel like you're a very technical mind. You have an engineering background. Do you think that precision helps you in baking?
It does, for sure. I started baking in the UK fully. I used to help my mom bake as a child, and then I stopped. Then I went to the UK for a master's degree and started baking there. But then I went back to Nigeria, and there are some ingredients that are very hard to find. So I wanted to bake some things. There's some things I would lie in bed and I must have this. So I would research substitutions and ingredients and things, and that is how I got more into the science of baking. I'm not Alton Brown levels of science baking nerd, but you have to have that background if you want to be able to bake successfully, to troubleshoot any issues you have, to make any substitutions if you are in a pinch and you can't go to the store. So knowing the functions of all those ingredients, especially the basic ones, really will help you in your baking journey and generally in anything, I believe, cooking, baking, in anything.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is now our flour and our salt and baking powder.
All right. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is we have 2 tablespoons of sugar and 1 tablespoon of lemon zest. I have those in a bowl here.
Okay.
So I'm going to do is I'm going to have my lovely assistant help me just mix those in. The reason for that is to release the oils from the lemon. It intensifies the lemon flavor. You don't have to do it, but I learned it. Sorry? You want a lollipop? Excuse me, everyone. Just a minute.
Well, I'm going to grate my zest because I haven't done that yet. So me and Fadila will be hanging out. Fadila, how old are you?
6.5.
6.5. And what grade is that?
Grade 1.
So are you just finishing grade 1 right now?
I'm not finishing it yet.
Not yet, but in a few weeks maybe, right? Did you learn a lot this year?
Yes.
Yeah? And I asked you this before, what is your favorite thing that your mother makes out of all of the baking that she does?
Coffee cake.
Delicious. That's one of my favorite things too. Well, and here's a question from Emily. It's a very related question. Raufikat, what is your favorite thing to bake?
My favorite thing to bake, I would say cakes. I like very simple cakes. I remember on one of the episodes of the show, they asked us what is our baking controversial thoughts about baking, and mine was that I like cake without frosting. I do not like frosting at all. As much as possible, I don't want frosting. So I like a really simple lemon cake or a really simple fruit cake or cinnamon swirl, plain with a cup of tea is my favorite thing to have.
I was going to ask you about that very controversial opinion. I agree, actually.
Right? Yes.
Yeah, me too.
See, the cake is just so much better. There's some really nice frostings. I make a really nice Italian meringue frosting. It's really light and it's not too sweet, but I would still rather have cake without frosting. And it's just less work. You can get the cake in your mouth faster without frosting.
That's right. And here's a question from Emily, and I think this must be from Fadila. She's asking, what's your favorite subject in school?
Probably art.
Art. Well, you'll fit right in at the craft club then. So I've just grated my lemon zest with a brand new microplane, being very careful not to grate my to the lemon. I was successful. So you're saying I should mix that with the sugar a little bit?
Yes. So let me just show you what it looks like when you're done. So you have the sugar and the lemon zest mixed together, and what we've done here is we've used the sharp crystals of the sugar to bruise the lemon zest and release the oils. So I said, you don't have to do this. I learned it while I was researching a recipe for Madeira cake, and I've been doing it with almost all any bake I do that involves lemon zest or orange zest or lime zest, where possible. So I said, you don't have to do it. You can add the lemon zest after the fact. If I was baking a lemon and vanilla cake, for instance, I wouldn't measure 2 batches of vanilla cake to add lemon zest to it. I would, I wouldn't measure 2. Sorry, that's my phone. I wouldn't measure 2 batches so that I could rub in sugar into the first one. I'll probably just add lemon zest to half of it. But if you're making just a lemon thing, it's just an extra step that really does amp up the flavor of any citrus that you're using.
Okay. And so here's another question for you. I have a tablespoon, and then I have a little bit extra, maybe half a tablespoon, a third.
Add it in.
Add it in? Okay, good. That's what I was gonna do, but only with your approval. So
okay.
Okay, so then I'm adding 2 tablespoons of sugar.
Yes.
We've been making a lemon turmeric cake that is quite delicious. That's been a favorite around our household these past few months.
That sounds nice. Is it an oil-based cake?
I don't know. My husband always makes it.
Okay.
It's one of those things I don't want to learn how to do it because
he does it so
right
well.
Okay, so this looks delicious. It just has, I can smell it so
And smell the
strongly.
lemon, right? Yes, that's
Yeah.
the whole idea. So just dump it into the flour and mix it all together.
Okay.
You don't have to get too fussed about getting the lemon all mixed in because we're still going to rub it with butter and that's going to mix it a little further.
Right.
I'm going to use butter.
Mommy!
Stacy's asking, is it okay if I already mixed the sugar into the flour?
That's fine. That's absolutely fine. Just go in and go ahead and add the lemon zest.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to grab my very cold butter.
Okay, I'll go grab
that so I can do it fast.
Bye.
Thank you. Okay, so our butter has gone in and we'll just toss to coat with the flour. And then we'll start smashing the butter into the flour with our fingers and just rubbing it in. So what you're doing is you're coating the flour with the butter, and that is what helps ensure that you have a nice tender scone.
So are you squishing them up and making them smaller?
Yes, you're going to rub it into the flour, like you're breaking the butter down with the flour. So you're going to have something that resembles a sandy mixture when you're done.
Okay.
So you don't want any huge, like currently we have huge lumps. No, Fadila, let me do that. You have huge lumps of butter. So you want to just smash and squish with handfuls of flour until all the butter has disappeared into the flour.
Okay, perfect.
Let me know when I can.
Raufikat, can you move to your right a tiny bit? Okay, perfect. Got it. Thank you. So I really have noticed, this past 14 months or so of the pandemic, so many people I know are baking, and baking is so important to them. And, we've seen so many people watching shows like the Great Canadian Baking Show. Why do you think that is about baking that it's so important to us right now, or maybe just in general?
I think generally because baking takes so much effort, even like the simplest bake requires you to preheat your oven, measure out stuff, put stuff away, mix things, wash them up when you're done. And then at the end of it, it's like this treat that you get to share with everyone. So I think the fact that we are able to bake, a lot of people, if you notice during this pandemic, they're not baking for themselves. They're baking so they could share. So in lieu of physical contact and hanging out together and spending time together, I think a lot of people were just baking and sharing their experiences and their time and their love that way. So I think that is why it's been so important, especially in this time.
It smells so good. Here's Melinda saying that it's so nice to meet you and your assistant. So that's hello to everyone.
Thank you. Nice to meet you too, Melinda. So
here's my aunt, Connie. Hello.
So the flour doesn't look so dry anymore. It kind of looks like very moist sand. And everything is well mixed because of the rubbing action that we've done.
And if you have, so I have some pieces that are still a little bit bigger and then some that are smaller. Should I be trying to get it consistent?
Yes,
or what?
Try to get it consistent because those large lumps are going to form pockets in your scone. So what you want is everything to be as uniform as possible so you have a uniform crumb. If you have big pieces like you would do in a biscuit, that's what gives you like flaky layers, but here you want like a tender, crumbly kind of texture. You don't want flakes as such.
Right. So when you got home from the show, did you need to take a few weeks off baking? Were you kind of baked out, or did you go right back to baking?
I actually had to. I had no choice because I got back home on a Saturday and I started a new job on the Monday. So I actually didn't have a choice but to take a break from baking. And then we were moving house in the time. We moved house about a week and a half after I got back home. So I did take a bit of a break.
Wow. Here's a note from John saying hello from Kitchener. where it feels like 32 degrees Celsius and way too hot to crank up the oven, but following along.
Thank you very much, John. I assure you it's going to be worth it.
John's making me a little bit jealous. It's warmer here today, but it certainly has not been 32 degrees.
Yes, it hasn't. It hasn't.
Okay.
Okay. So next thing we're going to add in our cranberries. We have, okay, my assistant there, my lovely assistant, thank you. 100 grams, about 3/4 of a cup of dried cranberries.
Okay.
Just something. And you know, sometimes they can clump together, so we're just going to use our fingers to separate them into the flour. Go ahead.
Okay.
Just to rub to break up any large clumps of cranberry. So at this point, I'm going to just tell you that scones are, once you understand the basics of all the ingredients, mixings can be anything your heart desires. So I have made these with dates for each. I made them with dates and orange zest and milk chocolate. You can make them with dark chocolate. You can make them with raisins and lemon. You can make them with blueberries. You can make them with almonds. You can put flaked almonds in them. You can make them with coconuts. Coconut and chocolate chips is really nice in the scones. You can leave them plain. My husband likes them absolutely with no mixings whatsoever. So you can just put a bit of lemon or orange zest in them, or just leave them as is. A splash of vanilla if you like. So basically, you can do whatever you feel like. I actually even considered using like mini Smarties for kids. I'm sure they would love something like that in scones. So basically, anything you wanted.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you move your bowl a little bit closer to the camera?
Okay. Is that
That's
better?
perfect. Yeah. So you're sort of working in the cranberries.
Yeah, I'm just trying to separate them. Some of them clumped up in the bag. I'm just trying to separate them with the flour, using the flour to break them up. That's fine.
And so people who are big fans of the show will maybe notice that this is a similar flavor profile to Italian Week. Do you want to talk about, I guess, transferring the taste of that recipe here?
Yes, indeed. So for Italian Week, our signature challenge, we had to make 2 flavors of biscotti. So what I did was I drew inspiration from my parents, both of them. Biscotti, okay, let me start with this. Biscotti is a really dry, crunchy kind of cookie. It's not like dry enough to break a tooth, but it's supposed to have a light, crispy texture. And that is absolutely the kind of cookie that both my parents adore. They are not fans of soft, chewy cookies at all. So what I did was I tried to draw inspiration from flavors that both of my parents would like for the 2 flavors. So for my dad, I made them with half whole wheat flour, half all-purpose flour, and they had a selection of mixed roasted nuts chopped into them and drizzled with dark chocolate for my dad. My mom is more, she loves anything lemon, fruity, so I made the lemon and cranberry biscotti drizzled with white chocolate. That was like my tribute to my parents for that episode. And I thought it would translate well into a scone. So instead of doing a drizzle, we just have white chocolate chips on the inside it. We'll have lemon zest and the dried cranberries. And they are so good. The practice ones I made were gone in a flash. So
amazing. I love it. Here's a question from Isabel, which is a very good question. How do you keep so clean? My granddaughter Dara and I are covered in flour.
Okay, so my daughter, I don't know if you can see, is also a mess. But I generally don't bake with an apron. I start and then I'm halfway through and I'm like, should have worn an apron. So I have to make an extra effort to keep my clothes clean when I bake. So I'm very conscious of the fact that I'm not wearing anything that is protecting my clothes. So I try to take extra care. And a bonus fact, I don't know if anyone noticed, I was really proud of how clean my aprons were throughout the show. Like everyone will be covered from top to bottom in chocolate or frosting, and mine would be like, nope, all good.
That's true. Your aprons were extremely clean.
I was really proud of that. just because I'm used to baking without one, so I have to keep my actual clothes clean.
And what did you do with your aprons? Do you frame one, or do you have?
No, they're all property of the show.
Right.
Yeah, they're all property of the show.
Okay. Okay, so I think I have mixed my cranberries.
Okay. So now we're going to add in the chocolate chips. Go on. All in. So we have 100 grams of chocolate chips. So you want it to feature, but you don't want it to be too much because otherwise you won't have enough scone together. So you can be generous, but don't go nuts. 100 grams is fine.
Right. Okay. And I know there was some on the Facebook page, someone saying they might use dark chocolate because they didn't have any white chocolate, or someone else saying they don't like chocolate.
Absolutely fine. You can mix and match as you like. You can use half dark, half white. You can change the fruit. You can use mixed peel if you want. You can use raisins. You can use grapes, like I said. So basically, it's just left up to your imagination, whatever you want. Okay, that's okay. So now what we're going to do is you're going to make a well in the center.
Okay.
Then we're going to get our wet ingredients, which is 170 grams of cream, heavy whipping cream, mixed with 55 grams of milk. Together that makes around 1 cup of liquid. I'm using full fat milk, but you can use any kind of milk you want. You can use almond milk, you can use skim milk, 1%, 2%, anything. So I'm going to grab that out of the fridge as well.
And you said as long as it is about a cup?
Yes. So a cup in total. The cream has to be full fat cream.
Right.
But the milk can be any other kind of milk.
Okay.
So I'm going to pour that into the well we have made.
So for someone who may not understand or know what a well is, do you want to describe what the purpose of a well is?
Yeah, so what I did was I just cleared a space in the middle of my bowl so that I could put the liquid into that. And it helps with mixing the dry ingredients evenly, because you can just gently pull the dry ingredients into the center where you have the liquid ingredients. So here we've poured in the cream and the milk. No, let me do this bit. Okay, so we'll just gently pull in dry ingredients and just kind of stir it all together, and then you see that it will look like it's wet and it won't come together, but it will.
Okay. This is the kind of step that I don't normally do, so I'm going to. You pour the whole liquid into the well and then start. Okay.
And then just start bringing it in with your spatula. It's quite messy and sticky, so you don't want to use your hands for this part.
And I know that in some baking, we're being really careful not to over mix, or at least that's something I learned from Great Canadian Baking Show and Nailed It. Is this one of those situations? Should I be being really careful not to mix too much?
I don't think you can mix too much. Just keep in mind, as soon as you have it coming together into something that's into a ball like this, you're fine. You don't really need a lot of energy or power to stir it and bring it all together. Mine is already pretty much done. So you can see there's no dry bits of flour anymore. Everything is looking pretty cohesive.
And here's a question from Jessica. Does coconut cream work?
I'm not sure. The fat content of cream is part of what contributes to the richness of this recipe, because we all know butter comes from cream. So it has that 35% fat that contributes to the tenderness and the richness. So if your coconut cream is high in fat as well, it would probably work, but I haven't tried it, so I wouldn't be able to say for sure.
Right. Okay. Sounds like something to experiment with, potentially.
Yeah.
So Fadila, did you watch your mom? Did you watch every single episode?
Yes.
Yeah? And were you nervous for her?
Not really.
No?
No.
Maybe you have your mother's confidence, do you? Did you think she was going to win?
I hope she would.
Yeah.
That's enough.
Who was your second favorite?
Let's see. I can't choose. They're all good.
Yeah, that's true. They were all good. Okay, so mine seems to have also, it's pretty,
Cohesive, right?
yep, pretty cohesive.
All right, so what you want to do is you want to sprinkle a surface with a bit of flour,
Okay.
and then just want to dump everything out into the center of your surface that is lightly dusted with flour. Try to get as much of it out of the bowl as you can. Okay. Then what you're going to do at this point is you're just going to put a little bit of flour on your hands. Let me do this. And then just try and pat it into a 7-inch circle.
Okay.
Just using my hands to try and get it to an even thickness.
And you're just sort of patting it.
Just patting. There's no need to roll or anything.
Okay.
So I've done this quite a number of times, and I'm fairly confident I can eye what 7 inches looks like. And I think, let's see.
So is it like the big one?
Yep, 7 inches.
Okay, that's really impressive. I might have to run and get my ruler. I'm not sure my eye estimates are as good as that. Here's a question from Alice. Can you use buttermilk instead of cream?
Buttermilk is not really common in Nigeria, so I don't have a lot of experience baking with straight buttermilk. A lot of the times when I use a recipe that called for buttermilk, I would have to substitute with milk and vinegar. So, like I said, the important thing about cream is the fat content. That's why we're using it in this recipe. So if your buttermilk is at least 35% cream, which I doubt, I'm not sure it gets that high, but you need at least that amount if you want to have the tenderness of the scone. If you are going to use buttermilk and it's not up to 35%, then you might have to experiment with upping the amount of butter that you rub into the recipe to start with.
Okay. Well, I don't have a ruler handy, but I feel like I might be getting close to 7 inches here.
I think if you just hold your hand up like this across, just shy of your knuckle here is about 7 inches.
Yeah. Okay, so I feel like this is pretty close.
Okay. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is, fingers out of the way, we're going to cut it into 6. So you have a couple of options here. You could have patted it into a square, or into a square and cut square or rectangle shapes out of it. You could have used a cookie cutter and cut out like the traditional British scones, cut out rounds. But I like this method for 2 reasons. It's pretty, it's convenient, and you don't have scraps. The issue that I have with scraps when you're cutting out stuff is because we cut out the scraps and then you join them back together, you're kind of overworking it. So the scones you cut out from the scraps you join together will not be as tender as the ones that you just cut out the first time. What that means is that if your recipes yield these 8 scones, you might get 4 really good ones, 2 okay ones, and then 2 really tough ones, as opposed to just cutting it into triangles and getting 8 excellent triangles of scones. So I prefer this method for scones.
Okay, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Here's Nadine and Bob from Oakville. They say hello, and they're having a date night in the kitchen. How sweet is that? Hello, Nadine and Bob.
Hello, practically neighbors from Oakville. So I'm going to cut them into 6 segments.
6.
Yeah. So we have 6 pretty even. So again, here we have a couple of options. We can leave them, we're going to transfer them to our baking tray. And we have a couple of options here. So you can leave them in a circle close together. What that means is that as they rise and bake, they will stick together so you have like soft edges and you only have a crispy edge around the round side of the outside. I like as much crispy edges as I can get, so I like to separate them so all the edges bake up crispy. So we just arrange them.
And you like there and three over there.
Yes.
And you're putting these on parchment?
On parchment paper, yes. Always line your baking sheets with parchment or silk. I don't have a lot of experience baking with silk. I like parchment because it's lightweight. I feel as if it doesn't interfere with the temperature of baking. I feel like silk might be a bit of an insulator, so it might stop heat from getting to the food as much as you want. That is just my uninformed mind's thinking. So don't quote me on that. I just prefer like the results I get with parchment paper.
Right.
Okay, so our scones are arranged in the baking tray. The last step before we put them in the oven, or second to last step, you reserve 2 tablespoons of cream.
This is something I can do.
Yeah, so we're going to brush each scone generously with some of the reserved cream. And the reason we're using cream instead of eggs for this is because we didn't use any eggs in the recipe of the scone. So what that means is we won't, usually what the recipe that uses eggs will call for is reserve some of the egg mixture that you use to brush with it. So if we were going to brush this with eggs, that means we'd have to crack a whole egg, use about 2 tablespoons of it, and then what would you do with the rest? I really do not like wasting anything. So as per the recipe, we just brush with the cream. The other thing is that there's milk solids in the cream, which helps with browning, gives it a really nice, appetizing golden color as it bakes in the oven. So that's why we're going to use cream as our wash for this recipe.
Oh, nice. Okay, so I have a question. When I was cutting, mine are not as even as yours, and I ended up with one real big scone there.
That's fine.
Should I cut it in half, or do you just leave one big scone?
I think you can leave it. It looks fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here's a lovely message from Cherie, or Cherry. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. She says, "Thank you for sharing and inviting us into your kitchen. My family cheered for you the whole season. Since watching you win, I have tried baking and gaining more confidence. You have been a great teacher tonight."
Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you have that experience from the show. That's what we all aimed for, going for it, to show that anyone can do it, anyone can bake. And I'm so glad that is how you experienced the show. I'm really happy to hear that. Thank you.
So I have a question for you. You know, sometimes people, they watch these shows, and even though it's obviously stressful, but people make these beautiful things that look so perfect, and maybe when we try to do it at home, it doesn't turn out so perfect, or it doesn't taste so perfect. You know, what advice do you have for someone like Cherie, who is just starting off and wants to get better, but maybe feels discouraged if things don't work out?
Don't feel discouraged. It happens to everyone. I still have baking fails up to now. So the only thing you can do is chalk it up to experience and don't give up. You know, if something goes wrong, try to find out why it did go wrong. Goes back to the earlier, what we were talking about earlier, about knowing what ingredients to do in recipes. So you know that, okay, maybe the baking powder wasn't as fresh as I thought, or maybe I mixed something up, or I overmixed it, I overmeasured the flour. Knowing what functions the ingredients perform and seeing the end result helps you determine what could have gone wrong. So don't get discouraged. There are loads of resources online. You can always check to see, why did my cake sink? Why are my biscuits dry? And you can ask me any baking questions at all. I'll do my best to answer if you have any things that you want to clarify. I'm happy. There's nothing I love more than talking about baking, except baking itself. So please feel free to ask.
So there you go. You have an invitation from one of the top bakers in the country that she will answer your questions. And Fadila, if you ever, do you ever do something and it doesn't turn out as good as you wanted? How do you deal with that if that happens?
Well, first I feel frustrated. I sit down and probably just relax for a bit. And then I do the thing again, but this time thinking about what I did wrong and how to fix it.
That is fantastic advice, and what a good attitude that is. I'm going to try that next time. Sometimes if you don't take that little break in the middle, you might just get more and more frustrated, and it's counterproductive, isn't it?
Exactly.
Okay, I've also sprayed cream everywhere because I was distractedly doing this. But
I also have a bit of cream sprayed. That's absolutely fine. So here I have some sparkling sugar, which Fadila said was orange. So I mixed it with a bit of white to make it look more yellow because I wanted yellow sugar. I didn't want to use just white.
So I didn't end up getting sparkling sugar. Can I use regular?
Yes, regular sugar is absolutely fine. So just grab big handfuls and sprinkle generously over your scones.
Okay.
It doesn't really add any sweetness. It just makes it look really pretty. The sugar stays in huge, crunchy bits like that, and it's really nice.
Yeah. It's so pretty. I saw some recipes to make sparkling sugar. Do you make yours from scratch, or did you buy it like that?
The sugar? Oh no, I bought it. I bought it because I bought like different colors.
Yeah, it looks beautiful. So some comments coming in. So this is from Jennifer Wilkinson. She says, my daughter and I watched you in the show, and we were cheering you on since the first episode, hoping you'd win, and so we're very starstruck to be here.
Thank you so much. Please don't be starstruck. I'm just a regular person like everyone else, just that I happen to end up baking on a TV show.
As many people have asked me, is Raufikat as nice in real life as she seems on the show? And I have told them all, absolutely, yes, she completely is. And here's a question from Dana. Can you freeze at this point and bake a couple at a time?
Absolutely. So I was going to say that is your make ahead option. So because they're like this, and because the recipe calls for cold butter, cold cream. The colder those ingredients when they go into the oven, you get a nice result. Nothing is affected when you freeze or refrigerate these. So by all means, go ahead and make a double batch and freeze 6 of them or freeze all of them and then bake them up 2 at a time as you need to. It is absolutely like the perfect breakfast treat, and as you can see, it's not really a lot of effort to do. So you can make them ahead of time and just bake them and have fresh spoons whenever you want. It's absolutely possible for you to freeze or refrigerate them at this stage.
Mm-hmm. That's so nice too. Just some rainy afternoon, have a couple of fresh scones with your tea in the afternoon.
Exactly. Or imagine having impromptu guests, and we can have guests over again, and then you just pull out fresh scones. They'll be so impressed. They won't stop talking about it.
I do feel like by the time we can have people in our homes again, everyone's just going to be wowing each other with the cooking and the crafts and baking.
Exactly.
Yeah. Question from Doreen. She's asking, would this recipe work with gluten-free flour?
I believe so, but I cannot say. So like I said, because I bake for kids and I haven't really had a chance to try any kind of dietary restriction baking, so I would not be able to say for sure. I have heard that some flours, King Arthur flour, gluten-free flour, and there's another one called Cup for Cup, gluten-free flour, behave like all-purpose flours. So if you were going to try them, try try those brands. But I cannot say for sure because I don't do much dietary restriction baking.
Yeah, for sure. And here's one more question from Jane. She says she cut hers into 12. Does she need to adjust the baking time?
Yes, probably yours will be done a little bit less. So these are going to go into the oven at 400 as preheated for 30 minutes, but you can probably start checking yours around 20 to 22 minutes.
Okay.
So we'll just put these in the oven.
Okay.
Timer for 30 minutes.
And setting the timer for how long?
30 minutes.
Okay.
Fadila, you can go. Thank you very much for your help.
Okay, goodbye.
Say bye-bye to everyone.
Bye.
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 All right.
Can you help me on my phone? I'm gonna get this off.
Daddy will help you.
I of course burnt my arm putting them in the oven, but I didn't swear on the live stream. How many times did you burn or cut yourself during the program, if ever? No. That shouldn't surprise me. You're so precise. You're not just.
No, not really. It was because like at home I have burns. I've actually burned myself quite a lot, but it was like a nightmare for me to lose time because like or have to start something over because I cut myself and bled into it. I was like, that cannot happen. Absolutely not. So I took extra care, hurry but don't rush. So I tried to be as careful with everything as possible, and the medics were fantastic. They were us always like waiting and watching to be sure that they're able to catch any injuries as soon as possible. So, but I didn't burn myself. I didn't cut myself at all.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So another question: if you froze them, do you have to let them thaw?
No, you don't. No, you don't. You can bake them straight from frozen. Just add a few minutes to your baking time. Just a minute.
Need a napkin. Like.
No. Here you go.
This is the classic scenario of this year has been people, working on business meetings with babies and kids, and I really appreciate you being willing to do that. I know that's not easy, and it's very gracious for you to host us here in your home.
No worries at all. I'm so glad for the opportunity.
Question from Kim: should we put them in the middle rack?
Yes, please, the middle rack. Or as long as you are baking just one thing, you want it to be in the middle rack because that is where the heat of your oven seems to be most even generally. All ovens have hot spots, but you can mitigate the effect of the hot spots by putting it in the middle of the oven if you are baking just one tray of something. And I do recommend baking just one tray at a time, just so that you're not fiddling with swapping trays around. If you're baking something like a cake and you open the oven too soon, you ruin your cake. So it's better to just bake them one at a time so you don't have to fiddle with changing positions to account for hot spots.
Right. Okay. Here's a note from Roger. I love to watch another engineer at work, and I think you definitely bring that engineering mind and perspective to this whole process. So one more question. We talked about people who may be just wanting to learn a little bit more for household baking. We also do have some people who are, like my cousin, sort of an amateur, but a very high-level amateur, and who has thought, maybe I would like to go on the Great Canadian Baking Show one day. Do you have any advice for people who think maybe they would like to try doing that?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So, like I said, because I used to read a lot about baking substitutions and about ingredients and different recipes, even though I didn't get to try them, that certainly helped. So a lot of the time, even just knowing what something is supposed to look like and reading the recipe and seeing how it's made can be really helpful. It helps you in recipes that you're familiar with already. You can import techniques into some recipes. And it also helps you with things that you're not familiar with, especially like in technical challenges where they say something and everybody's like, what's that? If you've already read it, even if you've never made it, you can visualize what it's supposed to look like. You know what the components of it are. So read widely about baking, about ingredients, about substitutions. Read about troubleshooting your baking so that something goes wrong, which it definitely will in the tent, for sure. Read about those. And also try to just keep calm. At the end of the day, it's a baking show, and it's not like a baking show where there's a huge cash prize at stake. Nobody's going to die. Just do your best, go there, have fun. I went there and I had the time of my life. I have 9 new best friends from baking, and I wouldn't trade the whole experience for the world. I wouldn't do it if there was money involved, because then the pressure is too much. You guys are not there to help each other. You're just there to go there and win. It's like you are focused on just your own success. But because you're all just there to share your love of baking, then you are able to have fun and just be free and be friendly would be on the way to set, and somebody would be like, I'm having this issue. I practiced last night and it's still not working. I would all discuss, like, have you tried this? Maybe you should do this or do that. And if something doesn't go right in the tent, this didn't have this happened. Also, I'm so sorry about that. Don't worry, the technical, you'll be fine. We're all there to encourage each other and prop each other up. So go with that mindset of we are just going there to showcase that you love to bake and not to prove anything to anyone, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, I think that's something that really stands out, and something that people have said to me that they appreciated so much about the show is that, everyone legitimately seems so supportive of each other. You, of course, were, known for helping other people out when you could, and that everyone seems to legitimately just really like each other and want each other to do well, which is not typically how, a competition show works.
Yes, exactly. Everybody did genuinely want everyone else to succeed. We had a group chat, we were sharing ideas. Somebody would say, do you have any idea why this is happening? And everybody would chime in with how you could fix it. Can you drop off a sample at my door? Let me taste it. Drop off a sample and everybody would try it and be like, okay, maybe you should try fixing this, or try this instead, or try that instead. So really it was an air of support and camaraderie and friendship that you can't beat that. It was fantastic.
Yeah, that's amazing. So here's a question from Darcy. He says, did you have the opportunity to, he or she, I'm sorry, did you have the opportunity to practice in the tent when you weren't being filmed?
No, we didn't practice in the tent. So we were all in a bubble in the quarantine at a hotel. So we practiced there. We practiced at home before we went to go and start filming, and then we practiced while we were at the hotel. So there was no opportunity to practice actually in the tent. Every time we were in the tent, we were actually baking. So yeah, that's how it worked.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I think this baking has gone really quickly. I can already sort of smell it starting to waft out of the oven. Is there anything else that you would like to talk about, or that you think is good advice from, for aspiring bakers or just kitchen home bakers?
Nothing really, except what I said. Don't be discouraged if it doesn't go well. Everybody has baking mishaps. There's no such thing as a naturally talented baker or naturally gifted baker. Everything comes from practice and experience. So you can only do that if you actually practice and gain experience. So don't be discouraged. Change your techniques. Try new recipes. If you have a recipe that doesn't work, I'll give you an example. When I was in Nigeria, I had an oil-based recipe I used to use for my cakes, and that recipe was very heavy in liquid. It had a full cup and a half of milk. It had half a cup of oil. It had eggs in it, and then the only dry ingredients in it were flour and sugar is not a dry ingredient, but that's for another day. But it had flour. That was the only dry ingredient. And I came to Canada, and I struggled with this recipe for a year. Like every time I made it, it would have these huge holes, and the cake would be chewy, and it tasted good, but the texture was just wrong, and I could not figure it out. And when I finally figured it out, I was like, okay, so that means this recipe can't work in Canada. And the reason was because Canadian flour and North American flour generally is made from a harder wheat than the flour that we use in Nigeria. So the flour we use in Nigeria is very soft. It's closer to a cake and pastry flour. The flour here is really hard, and it can pass for a bread flour in some recipes. So that was what was making the cake tough. As soon as you added the liquid to it, it would start developing gluten, and you'd have like a bready, chewy cake. So I had to rework the recipe completely, ditch the oil, move to a different recipe before I figured it out and eliminated that problem. So don't give up on it. I would literally sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night and this cake, I have to figure it out. Kind of. So I'm not saying that level of fixation on it, but don't give up. Every time you have a chance, just think about what the issues could be. What are the problems you're having? What are the things that could cause that problem, and eliminate them one by one until you find the answer.
Well, I was all prepared to let you go, and then some new comments came in, so I'm just gonna send you these.
I absolutely don't mind. If you have questions, just
so you're
ask.
getting many kind thank yous from Michelle, Mary Ann, Jessica, Rob, Gloria, Bruce, Sally, Jade, many.
Thank you all.
And from Christine, she says, hello from Milton. My husband and I watched every episode of the show and cheered you on like it was the biggest sporting event of the season. Thank you for being such an inspiration in the kitchen, particularly with your daughter. Introducing my 5-year-old to baking has been a unique challenge and pleasure.
Yes, Christine, it's not easy at all. Like, I'm sure you have seen here, both of us were like, stop that, don't do that, don't do that. It's not as easy and like photogenic and picturesque as it seems like you see on social media and on TV. It's really hard baking with kids, but keep at it. If my mom hadn't baked with my sister and I, probably wouldn't be here today. She would let us mix things and lick the bowl if it didn't have like raw eggs in it, and she would ask us for our opinion on how it tasted. If you tried something different, what do you think about this, what do you think about that? So it's hard, and it might seem like it's easier for you to just do it yourself and let them eat it. But if you can keep at it, it's absolutely worth the effort. And now my mom, when I go home, she requests cakes. She can just sit down and be like, I would like a vanilla cake tomorrow, please. So think about that as well.
They will one day be baking for you.
Yeah.
And you told me that your mom was an inspiration when you were growing up, and that she baked a lot. Did you have something that was a favorite that she used to make for you?
So she used to make this sandwich cake. It was a vanilla cake on the bottom and a chocolate cake on the top, or maybe inverted, I don't know, 2 separate cakes and then sandwich with jam. And it was, to me, the fanciest thing ever. Like, oh my God, a cake and then another cake. I really did love that.
Oh, that's amazing. It does sound very fancy. My grandma used to make red velvet, and I had the same feeling about it. I couldn't imagine a more fancy cake. And here's a question from Julia about the show. Did you know the showstopper recipes and signatures in advance?
Yes, we did. So what happens is you are given a brief. So for example, for cake week, we were told for our signature we had to have a burnt cake with a glaze and some kind of handmade decoration or a decoration or accessory on top of it. And then for the showstopper, they wanted a 3-tier mirror glazed cake. So you are told the brief, but you have to develop your recipe. You have to come up with your flavors. You have to make sure you can finish it in the time. And then you're given the opportunity to practice. You can practice it once, you can practice it 3 times, you can practice it every day. It's totally up to you. But you are told your signature and showstopper ahead of time. The only one that we find out, like literally on the spot, as they are watching it, is when we find out is the technical, and we don't get the chance to practice that or know it in advance in any way.
Yeah, it was unbelievable to me sometimes when you would be star baker making something that you never made or tasted before.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, those were star baker was the highlight of it, because everybody that watches the show knows that it's like the highest acknowledgement of that you've done really well that week. Everybody wants to be star baker, so winning star baker was a nice feeling.
And what kind of reaction have you gotten from people now that you've won? I mean, do people recognize you on the street? I realize we're mostly wearing masks now, but have you had a lot of feedback from people?
I have actually had a few people recognize me. Sorry, just a minute. Hi.
Hi.
So I've actually had a few people recognize me because of this head wrap. Even though I was wearing the mask, the head wrap and the glasses gives me away, and it has always been so positive. And even like online, the reception and the reaction was better than I could have ever hoped for, better than I could have ever imagined. I had a few, like the week before the finale aired, I was so nervous. I was like, what if people think I don't deserve it? What if people think I wasn't that good? What if they hate the fact that I won? What am I going to do? And it has been totally the opposite. Everybody has been so supportive and so nice, and I'm really, really grateful for that.
Yeah, I think when the people you're competing against even say, I think the right person won, I think the right person won.
All right. Bye.
Well, we have taken you away from your family during the busy hour, and I so appreciate your time and your graciousness bringing us into your kitchen. And I sort of feel like we're just together baking, and I really love it, and I really do appreciate it so much. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, like you said, I was a bit reluctant because of all this and everything, but it's just the sign of the times. It's how everyone is living life these days. So I'm really glad that you're able to convince me, convince me to do it because I'm really having a lot of fun. And at the end of it, I have scones to have with my tea tonight.
Well, I am a very smooth talker, and just a note to everybody, we will add the recipe instructions to the website, and you can always replace it anytime on the Globe website and on Facebook. I wanted to say thanks to our technical team, making everything work behind the scenes, and thank you to everyone who joined us today. It really is a pleasure to be in my kitchen and Raufikat in her kitchen and baking with all of you. A reminder, when you take your scones out of the oven, please share them on our Facebook page, share them on Twitter. Check out Raufikat's Instagram at Lannis Bakebox, and I'll share that on the Facebook page as well, but that's LANIS Bakebox. And stay in touch. We look forward to seeing you for a tie-dye class on June 22nd. And until then, stay safe, keep making creative things, and I hope your scones turn out deliciously. Thank you, Raufikat.
Thank you so much, everyone. Just a quick reminder, when you take them out of the oven, give them about 10 minutes so the crumb can set up before you dig in. It can be tempting to go in while they're still hot, but the chocolate will be really melted and hot, and the crumb will be not set up. So just give them about 10 minutes and have them warm. And like she said, you can reach out to me on Instagram. I'm quite responsive there. I will answer any and all questions that you have. And I really, really thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you so much, Raufikat. Have a great night, everybody.
All right. Bye, everyone. Thank you.